Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Friday, everyone. Marty Kaiser here. Another episode of our Real Estate Tidbits podcast. Hope everyone's doing well. I did want to announce my producer-director is going out of town, so next week's podcast we will not be doing. So our next podcast after this one will be 2 weeks from today, which is November 29th. However, the great news is we do have all our podcasts stored online. So wherever you're listening to our podcasts in the various forums we have, they're all saved on that for your listening pleasure. I did want to go over a couple things today that I thought were kind of interesting. The first thing I'll mention is we just received a new listing yesterday. It's in Hunters Creek in the Osita community. The address is 4033 Kiowa Drive. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath pool home. The unique or excellent features of this home, it's one of the largest, if not the largest lot in Hunters Creek. It's over a third of an acre, and it's kind of what we refer to as a rear flag lot. So not only do you have a lot of land, but you have an oversized driveway which accommodates around 10 vehicles. So it's great if you have a large family that has multiple vehicles, or if you do any entertaining. It just makes it a lot less headaches and having to worry about people parking on the street, etc. The lot is also a private wooded lot, so you have no rear neighbors, and you get more of the feel of nature. And especially when you're sitting on the pool area, you have a big covered pool highlighted by brick pavers, and you have tremendous views. So hopefully that's something that may interest you. We're also having an open house tomorrow, November 16th, Saturday. It'll be held from 1 to 3. And again, if you'd like to schedule a private appointment or you have questions on this home, you can call me directly at 407-595-9700. A couple of other things I wanted to share today are some of my, when I get on these podcasts, sometimes I have, for lack of a better term, pet peeves. So I had an interesting experience this morning. We had a closing, and it was predicated on another property closing yesterday, and that property did close yesterday, and everything went smoothly in that closing. And so I was double checking everything prior to the closing just to make sure that everything was done properly, that it would be a smooth in and out for my seller, because my seller was relocating out of town. And he's an elderly gentleman, so I wanted to make it as smooth as possible for him. And then I was notified that my title company, who's handling today's closing, hadn't received funds from yesterday's closing. So I had to do a lot of last-minute shuffling on that to make sure that we didn't have any unforeseen issues that would hold things up. My pet peeve is, I find this a lot in real estate, both dealing with agents and dealing with title companies, that communications in the 21st century are severely lacking. People either just don't feel the need to communicate in detail, or just are kind of, for lack of a better term, ignorant of business etiquette. If the funds hadn't been in this title company that I use by the end of business yesterday, I should have been immediately notified, and I would have immediately got to work to make sure the situation was rectified, or at least I knew why there was missing funds, for lack of a better term. So I was never given this information until 9:45 this morning for an 11 o'clock closing. But fortunately, I was able to get it taken care of. I try to be very fastidious and make my transactions as smooth as I can for my customers, and I don't like to have any unanswered questions. Unfortunately, in a real estate transaction, there's multiple parties involved, and some parties just are not as efficient, or possibly just are kind of lackadaisical when it comes to notifying you. This is something very germane to a transaction, so I did, in my own inimitable fashion, request of the title company, who I've been working with for a good bit of time, that if this situation arose in the future, I was to be immediately notified and proactive action needed to be taken, as opposed to just sitting back and waiting for the funds to appear in the account. Fortunately, like I said, this was taken care of, but it's just something I wanted to rant about. On an unrelated note, relates to society and how our government is operating. As everybody knows, elections have consequences, and I will state, because I try to be non-political in all my comments, that I'm independent, so I don't really have a party preference. I look at the candidates and their backgrounds and how they've governed in the past, how they're stating they're going to govern in the future, and try to vote for who I think would be the best candidate forward for the United States. Well, as you probably know, if you follow the news at all, over the last 48 hours, there's been a number of cabinet appointments. Now they have to go through a confirmation process, so these appointments are not guaranteed. We sort of expected some unusual appointees, as the president-elect kind of warned us that he was going to do some things that may be outside of the box a little bit. However, a couple of these appointments, you just kind of scratch your head about and really wonder about our country and how it governs itself. The most puzzling is the Attorney General. This is the number one law enforcement officer in the United States. There is nobody above the Attorney General. And there was a lot of discussions during the campaign about how they felt that the Justice Department had been politicized. And I won't comment on that one way or the other, but that was a big talking point for the president-elect. And then he appoints Congressman Matt Gaetz, who in all likelihood would have been censored or dismissed from Congress for inappropriate and criminal behavior with underage women or women. He was consorting with a known felon from Seminole County who got booted out of office and is serving jail time right now. He's been under investigation for a long time, and because he's a politician, a lot of the details have been kept relatively quiet. But lo and behold, he was nominated by President-elect to be our Attorney General. Here's a fella that could be convicted of a felon, and sometimes they would call that, and I might be using the wrong term, but kind of pedophile activity, because this was relations, alleged relations with an underage woman, and there's evidently quite a bit of proof about that. And yet he'll be in charge of enforcing the law in the United States. Only in our current country could a person with this type of background be up for the position of the number one law enforcement officer in the United States. Hopefully he won't get approved by the Senate during their confirmation hearings, but you never know. It just makes you wonder, though, the thinking of putting a person like this in a position that has this much power. And again, it's just an example of when you elect someone and they have pretty much unlimited authority, you're kind of at the whim of caprice of the decisions they make. The other appointment I wanted to mention was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Supposedly will be nominated to take over our, I think it's HHS, our whole health system in the United States. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., let's just say, has had erratic behavior and views for many years. But the thing that would concern me as a citizen and should concern you as a citizen is he's an anti-vaxxer to the extreme. So the scuttlebutt is that he's going to do his best to gut our system of vaccines. So theoretically, that could include eliminating smallpox, polio, tuberculosis vaccines. Well, if you've studied history, regardless of your feelings about vaccines, we had a lot of people die from those diseases prior to the advent of diseases and vaccines. As you probably know, if you learned history in school, a lot of people over the years, thousands or millions, I don't know the exact amount, died from smallpox, polio, tuberculosis. And those diseases have pretty much been eradicated due to the advent of vaccines. So having somebody in charge of our health system that is an extreme anti-vaxxer, and if you feel as strongly about this as myself, then you need to write into your senators, because they're the ones that go through the confirmation process, and express your views about this. Especially if you have school-age children. I know most people would not want to send their children to public schools where they could be exposed to these diseases, because of a number of children would be allowed to attend schools that are not vaccinated. So this to me is of extreme concern. And it's fine to have an anti-vax opinion, but people that have that type of opinion should not be in charge of our healthcare system. So this is just an example of some of the consequences of elections, because it's really, a president is only as effective as the staff that he appoints. And if you have a lot of extreme viewpoints, you're going to get a very extreme run society, and I don't know how many people feel extremely. I can tell you studies of both parties indicate that the viewpoints that you hear during the elections do not express the viewpoints of the majority of people. You have extremes on both sides of the political spectrum, but they're not representing the majority of people. So I would urge you to follow these appointments closely and express your indignation if you feel as strongly as I do about it. On a happier note, the storms that were predicted for Florida and the Orlando area are going to be a lot more minimal than expected. So at the very worst, this latest storm will just be a lot of rain and not the high winds or anything. So that's some good news. I wanted to re-emphasize we are having the open house tomorrow at 4033 Kiowa Drive in Hunters Creek. It'll be from 1 to 3, which is Saturday, November 16th. So please attend if you're interested. People can call me if you have any questions or concerns about not only real estate, but if you would take exception to anything I've said on the podcast or would like me to bring in other viewpoints or other issues, feel free to contact me. I can always be reached by email at marty@floridasells.com. That's all for today. Have a great and safe weekend. Marty Kaiser out.